Welcome to the Wealthologist Weekly, your go-to for all things wealth management and financial strategies. I'm your host, Chris Hobart, the Wealthologist, and today I wanted to dive into a pretty essential topic, distribution strategies. So whether you're planning for retirement or maybe you're in retirement and you're looking to optimize your investments, understanding the pros and cons of different distribution strategies is key. So I'm going to unravel some of the complexities and uncover maybe the best pathways to consider towards financial success for you, your family, your loved ones. See, the thing is, there's this ongoing conversation about safe withdrawal rates in retirement. The question is, can I simply set it and forget it at 4% in terms of your income, especially if you're relying on income from marketable securities? The answer, maybe. My question to you is, do you want your income when you're no longer getting a paycheck to be based upon maybe? My guess is probably not. But our brains like simple, right? And there's a basic rule of thumb, like the 4% rule, that scratches that itch of simplicity. Now, let's take a look at how simple this is. So let's say you have a good investment portfolio, $4 million when you retire. And your investment mix is 50% stocks and 50% fixed income. And you draw that first 4% in the first year. That's $160,000. Now, each year you can increase your withdrawal by 3%. That's the rule. So the second year you can withdraw $164,800. And the following year it increases by 3% again to $169,744. So why do you want to do this? Well, that helps you maintain your purchasing power given inflation. Now, the model says that you can maintain this income pattern for 30 years. Now, this research, it was named SafeMax, was developed by Bill Bengen and published in the Journal of Financial Planning way back in 1994, 30 years ago. And it's pretty simple, right? If you need to draw more than 30 years, all you got to do is reduce your withdrawal rate or increase the rate of return on the portfolio. Again, simple. The 4% rule, it feels good. It sounds reasonable. It's easy to understand. And the math it's well done. It's tested and it's elegant. But when we burn the midnight lamp on this, we're going to find out that there's a number of complications. First and foremost, it was based upon findings in 1994 when interest rates were different and the world was different. And it's based on history. And subsequently, media, and we'll actually call it marketing media, has resulted in calling it a rule as opposed to a theory. And the founder himself has revised the research, noting that actually 4.5% or so is now the new rule. And quite frankly, I've seen different rules on similar research, including that of Morningstar, ranging from 2.8% to 5%. And in my experience, we've seen some clients successfully draw higher percentages, although that's not always recommended because there can be volatility in the markets. The thing is, it's really dependent on your situation, your Social Security, inflation, your age, your lifespan, your real experience inflation, Social Security inflation, other sources of income, your spending habits. Do you have an inheritance coming in? What did you experience as a portfolio rate of return? See, the thing is, when we talk to the smart folk out there, they tell us that the life expectancy in the U.S. recently dropped to 74.2 years. So a lot of times people might say, well, if I quit work at 55 and I need to finance my life for 20 years, well, maybe we'll bump it up to 25 years. Well, then I should be good. It seems like this will work. There's a problem to this thinking. And maybe you'll like to hear this. You are most likely not average by the terms of that study. Quite frankly, not the slightest. You see, the average, when they look at life expectancy, it includes high-risk careers like coal miners and deep-sea fishermen. It includes addicts, the chronically unhealthy, suicides, and death at birth. You're likely far above average in income and education than the general population that they look at. You've got access to better health care. You work at a lower risk occupation, and you probably grew up in a fairly stable, well-fed, and maybe a low-stress household. Now, again, I realize not everybody had all of these things line up together. Totally understand that. But I think if we surveyed most folks that we work with, we're going to find that most people, that is their world. So all of this to say that expecting an average lifespan when you're far above average in our world, it's a fallacy. You see, the studies actually show us that if you're married at age 65, you have something like a 50% chance of one of the spouses living to age 92. Now, from our perspective, that means that a 30-year life expectancy is really the minimum lifespan that we need to plan on if you're in your early 60s. Again, I'm going to stress that minimum. I don't want you to run out of money, which means we actually have to plan more to age 100 for most of our clients. And that even has what we call some tail risk as well. The reason is there's a lot of variables. Most of them, they are not controllable by you. Now, what are the ones that you can control? Well, how much you can withdraw or how much you do withdraw, when you start withdrawing, and your strategy or your allocation to grow your money. So the question is, what works? If the 4% is not the best thing, what works? Well, a general rule is save a lot more money than any rule says you need to save. Now, that may not be reasonable. You might be past that saving point. But there are some solutions, though. The Retirement Income Certified Professional Program studied 11 different types of income models. No doubt there's more than just 11. They could probably do 11 more easily. But I want to share with you some alternatives with a side note. Because there is nothing simple about designing for or sustaining income over an unknown period with a lot of variables and inflation and investment returns. There's a lot more to each of these alternatives that I'm going to share, but I want to give you just a flavor of some concepts. So the first idea is annuitize your keep the lights on expenses. In other words, create your own pension just for your needs, but your controllable or your variable expenses, things that you can live without, well, those would be covered by earnings or withdrawals from your investments that weren't annuitized, that are in a portfolio. Things like inflation raises would also be covered this way. Now, the thing is, there are some annuities that cover a lot of these, and they can be reviewed at the time when you're annuitizing or you're looking at those needs. But the key is having set expenses covered by something guaranteed and variable expenses covered by things in the market. Second concept is maintain a 2 to 5 year income cash and reserve or cash equivalents with the remainder in an actively managed portfolio. Now, the point here is to maintain enough cash, and you might, instead of using cash, you might use an ultra short municipal bond fund or a bond ladder or treasury bills, stuff we talk a lot with our clients about, to help cover your income needs through the peak to trough to peak cycle. Now, the higher your equity allocation in this type of a model, the higher your income reserve allocation needs to be to cover any volatility. Now, we like to draw all income from cash reserves and then refill quarterly in good markets. And if we go to bad markets, well, that's when you're intentionally drawing down on these safer reserves. Now, third concept is just to annuitize your entire income need rather than only your fixed expenses. Now, depending on the annuities that you would use, you might need dollars invested for inflation raises and unplanned expenses. Again, this can lock you in where you don't have a lot of flexibility, so be careful there. Number 4, create a bond ladder so that the maturing principal serves as your income for the year. Now, you could ladder in such a way as to give yourself an inflation pay raise each and every year. With interest rates where they are now, this has become much more compelling. A fifth concept I want to share with you is have a bucket strategy where you set aside buckets of money, maybe in a 5 or 10 year increment. And then the further out you go in this strategy, you have more aggressive investments. And then you adjust the bucket strategy as each bucket matures. So you have a current income, a 5 year, a 10 year, a 15 year, more aggressive as you go further out. Now, there are, the use of annuities in a scenario like this as well. This by no means, what we've just talked about, though, is comprehensive when we talk about income models. These are 5 that we see and we probably use the most often with different clients and their situations, with number 2 and number 5 being probably the most common in our practice. But what works best for you can't be determined with me talking like this. And the pros and cons of the various options are, in and of themselves, a really long and in-depth conversation specific to what your needs are. This is why you should have your own financial plan and spend at least a few years thinking about and planning your post-career lifetime income. Now, I think the question that we always like to ask is, should most people be their own surgeon in this instance and do all of their own income planning? Well, obviously I'm biased, and of course I don't think so. Income planning and dealing with all of these different variables that we're talking about, it is technically complex with a lot of choices, and just like a lot of surgeries out there, there's a lot of moving parts. And it can be an emotional topic too, and a textbook case for employing a professional like myself or my firm. So that's a wrap for our conversation today in this week's episode of Wealthologist Weekly. Obviously, we delved into that intricate world of distribution strategies as deep as we could in 10 minutes, taking a look at some of those different nuances that might impact your financial journey. So the thing that I'll tell you is finding that right distribution strategy is about aligning it with your specific goals, your risk tolerance, and your timeline. So I want to thank you again for tuning in. And until next time, stay financially savvy and keep exploring the pathways to wealth. This is Chris Hobart signing off. And if we can ever be of any help, just let us know. Give us a call or drop us an email at hello@hobartwealth.com. Have a great rest of your week.